Welcome everyone to the Empowering Minds monthly webinar series. Thank you all for joining us today. We have a very special guest with us, Homawattie Harry, a general education teacher. She's been teaching children, working with them between the ages of 2 to 14 for the past 9 years. Welcome to the Empowering Minds webinar series. We're so happy to have you on board with us today.
Hello, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
First, I just want to say a special thank you and commend you because I know educators like yourself, especially during the height of the pandemic, you really doubled up efforts to ensure that, you were meeting the educational excellence of standards, and not only academically, but you really had to make sure that you were, watching for the emotional and the behavioral aspects of kids. So you, like educators like yourself, thank you. We commend you for all your hard work, especially during that time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, it was definitely a transition from in-person to virtual, being we had no experience at all, but we were able to adjust, and the year's coming to an end. So it's been going well so far. There was challenges emotionally, as well as physically, kids really wanting to be with each other in the building and outside surrounded by other kids as well.
Right. And I know like that personal interaction is sort of like the heart of education. So I'm sure that was posed a lot of challenges for children as well. Tell us a little bit about your background. I want to, I know you have a couple of degrees and you have some special training, right?
Yes, I have my bachelor's in early childhood education and my master's in early childhood education with extension of special ed. And right now I'm pursuing my master's in early intervention. Nice. And I'm almost finished with that.
Great. Sounds like you have a lot under your belt. Yeah, that's really cool. So I know a lot of the conversation today we had talked about in the past is how children are developing, how we're teaching them as a holistic approach so they can thrive academically, which is something that's sort of new to me, at least. I mean, I don't see it often happening in schools where they're using that holistic approach. And I would just love to hear your take on sort of how that works and your thought process behind it.
Yes, of course. I feel like many believe that children, when it comes to children and going to school, they only focus on the academics and that's all that matters. But I feel like this pandemic really opened up other people's eyes and changed their perspectives because they were able to see a real difference within the children's emotionally. I did have a friend whose daughter, she said she was expressing like, I wish this never happened. I'm so sad. And many of our children that I was teaching would say, I wish we could be in the building. I hate that Corona existed. And, they were vocalizing what they were feeling as little as 5 and 6-year-olds. They were aware that there was something wrong and they couldn't be in the building. They had to be home all the time. It definitely was not easy in the beginning. As you said, being a kindergarten teacher, a lot of our teaching is hands-on. So it's a lot of physical activities and hands-on activities. And it was challenging both for teachers and kids to just transition into paper and pen work. And that's not really our way of teaching our kids because one, it's not interesting. It's not engaging. And, they lose focus very easily. So it was hard enough keeping their attention through a computer. So we had to become creative and use virtual games and, try different things every day just to make sure our kids are staying focused, still learning, even though they're not in the building.
Right. And it's interesting because, you think about it from an adult's point of view, a perspective, especially during the height of the pandemic, how were we dealing with it? How was our anxiety heightened and our stress levels heightened? So I can only imagine how that felt for kids, especially toddlers at that age. And for them to be able to voice that and speak to you about that, at least they opened up and at least they, came and they expressed their feelings in some way.
Yes, and I did have a few kids actually say, like, they had picture day at school, and they were actually able to meet each other. So they had 3 of them that saw each other, and they came back and they were so excited. They said, I saw him at school and I saw this one at school, and they're like, I can't wait for us to be together and play. And they're really looking forward to September, fall, when we could take a class picture together.
Yeah,
because they have not been able to see me physically because I've been working at home. My co-teacher has been working in person.
Right.
So our whole class has not met yet. And, you know, you spend a whole year with these kids and you feel like you've known them for so long, but yet you feel like you don't know them because you haven't been able to see them. And it's so hard because I love hugging my kids and talking to them. And, you know, it's hard not to do that.
Right, make that connection with them, and that's what teaching is all about, is making those connections. And you know, children want to feel valued. They want to feel like somebody cares about them, that they matter. And I guess it's hard to really let those feelings come through the computer screen, like you're saying. So without that personal interaction, I'm sure that they were missing that. I know, Laura, for you, being a professor also, I'm sure you understand the you know, the connection, right?
It was definitely a transition, even for my own students, the big kids, right? It was definitely a transition, even for us as professors, you know, having to teach completely remote. Even though I have taught like blended format, it was still different. But um, it's a transition because a lot of my students have little kids of their own, you know, so it was hard, you know, for them to kind of find the time to make sure that the kids were getting everything that they needed. So I think it was like a good opportunity to really talk to your kids and get to know them and spend some time with them and really understand like what their needs are.
Right.
As far as how the learning environment needs to be, the structure, when they actually need you to kind of like step in, right? When they kind of need that encouragement. But kids, they need each other. They really do. We're social beings by nature, and we do need other people, but especially kids, you know, it's how they grow, it's how they learn.
Right, have been nurtured,
Thrive,
exactly.
right. And they thrive in that kind of atmosphere. So I found that it was really challenging for I have a lot of friends that have children as well, and they said like how frustrating it was, you know, to see their little ones, and they were not happy, and they made really difficult decisions to send their children, even though they were terrified, to send them back to school physically, even though they were like, I'm so scared, I don't know if this is the right decision that I'm making, but they need this. Like they were worried about their children being depressed, you know, suffering, and that happens, you know. So these are the things that they were more concerned about. They were so worried about their mental health. They saw their child suffering, and they were like, look, my child, there's only so much that a parent can do at home or working as well, right? And then they realize, you know, this is where the teacher really comes in, you know, like this is why there is the difference in the location. This is why you go to school, you know, physically, you know, and you're out of home. And then this is exactly why, you know, because the atmosphere is just not conducive, you know. And it was very difficult. So I think parents really had to
step it up a lot. The parents had to go through a lot, and I know it was difficult on the kids, and I'm sure it was challenging for the parents too. Well, you know, I do want to understand sort of like I guess the strategies that you implemented in terms of like that holistic approach that you were talking about, Homawattie, in terms of like what were some of the things that you did with the kids to really help them integrate learning, not only academically, but like socially and emotionally? What were some of the strategies that you sort of implemented to help them?
Prior to the pandemic, what we would do in person, as you said, it was hard to formulate those relationships virtually. So in person, it was so important to formulate those relationships because that's where they build trust with you. And, you know, without the trust, these kids, if they're having a hard time listening or they're having a hard time learning, they're not going to want to speak to you and let you know what's going on and what's causing this unless you have that relationship and you have fully earned their trust. And oftentimes their behavior is taken as that they're not listening at all. They don't want to listen, when in reality, they have something deeper going on where it's emotionally like they are thinking like, you don't know what's going on because they come from different backgrounds, as in home lives. All of them have different home lives. You don't know what they're going through at home. And then they're coming to school. You don't know their situation. So I feel like oftentimes that is looked over. And you often blame the child that they want to behave this way, when in reality, they don't want to. They may just be seeking attention, whether it's positive or negative, because they want to be seen. And oftentimes what happens is, us as teachers, sometimes what happens is we focus so much on the kids that maybe acting out or maybe acting a certain way that we don't give enough attention to those that are following the rules and that are doing what they need to do. So then I feel like that can often lead to those kids then following those behaviors. And that's something that we have to be very cautious of, because we do not want follow the leader. We want the kids to know, like, we acknowledge you. We see that you're following the rules. We see that you're listening. Like, you have to give them compliments. And those kids that do need the extra support, positive reinforcement is number one, rewarding them for good behaviors. So as much as it may seem like it's nothing, if it's a safety hazard, as in the child is trying to leave the classroom all the time, you could simply say, if you stay in the classroom for 5 minutes, I will give you 2 minutes of playing with this toy, like giving them something that they like. So you slowly add on the time, stay for 10 minutes, stay for 15 minutes. Once you're able to get them in the classroom, then you can focus on academics. Okay, now that we're in the classroom, let's see if you can work on math for 5 minutes. I'm going to give you 2 minutes of playing a game. It's all about working with the students, listening to them, compromising with them, because they are human beings. And I feel like oftentimes that's something where it's like, oh, they're just kids. They don't know anything. Like, you know, whatever you tell them, they'll listen, but they have feelings.
And we tend to neglect that sometimes. I know with my kids in their school, during the height of the pandemic, they would like send home questionnaires and ask questions about their social and emotional well-being, which I found to be, I was like, wow, you know, this is so interesting that they're sending home these questionnaires. Like, how are you feeling today? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling angry? Is there a smiley face? Is there a frown face? You know, like things like that, where they were just trying to understand their well-being, basically, so that if they were okay to come back to school, or if they were okay to be in remote learning that day. They just wanted to assess how they were doing. And I think that's such an important piece, like you just said, of education and academic learning, because some kids, like, they go to school, we don't know what's happening at home. Like you mentioned, academically, they could be doing really badly because they're impacted by something happening at home, or maybe something they just experience like on the news or things like that. I mean, Jenny is in social media. She owns a social media company, and there's so much happening on social media too that these kids are exposed to, even at a young age, right?
Yeah, definitely. First, I just want to say that I give you mad props, okay? Because I have been spending some time with my 5-year-old nephew, and he is a ball of energy. And I cannot imagine like the learning curve and how you had to adapt from, you know, brick and mortar, like in class, to learning how to lead your classroom and teach your class full of toddlers, is it, right?
Yeah.
Virtually. So I commend you. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you guys. I heard that you were doing positive reinforcement, you know, like negotiating with the kids. So that is fantastic. I love that. And even though I don't have kids now, I have a lot of friends that have kids. And I know, because I've heard stories from them about, like, you know, parenting and like them complaining about like the teachers and the principals. But now, because of the pandemic and their kids being at home and them being more active in their learning and their education, right, they probably definitely appreciate more, you know, you guys as teachers and professors, because they see how hard it is, you know, to educate and like be a part of their learning, right? So I can see like how this has been good on both ends, you know, to just kind of work together and like have a better understanding of how, because everything in the end is like, you know, helping your child, right? So, but yeah. Sorry, Jen, I totally went off left field. Like I had to just say
it's totally
all of
fine.
that, get it out now.
No, I totally understand. I know you're spending time with your nephew, and that's really cool. And so I'm guessing you're understanding how it would be when you become a parent, that these are the things to worry about,
Exactly.
and that can scare
Exactly.
parents too. So
Oh,
maybe some people who are
oh my
listening right
gosh.
now who aren't parents yet, this is what you have
Yeah.
to look forward to. But and I think it's okay that you have that fear and a little bit an apprehension about it, because it's all part of life and growing up. But I think it's important, like Homawattie and Laura, you're all saying, that we take those initial steps to make sure that we are helping kids to thrive academically,
Yes.
by making sure that we are caring for their emotional and mental well-being, and that we are actually recognizing the signs, which is another question I wanted to ask you guys. What are some of the signs that, as teachers or as parents or just somebody in the community, that we should look out for, maybe?
Well, I actually got some books to help with that. And this one of the books that I got from her said is Empathy is Your Superpower. It's a book about understanding the feelings of others.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been great. Like it has, like, I'll just show you a little bit of it. Like this, like, to guess the feeling or what they think the expression is.
Right.
And then also, like, what does it feel like to do something that's kind for someone?
Nice.
Recognizing, recognizing their own empathy and understanding, like, what
Right.
it is. And honestly, like, I think when it comes to little ones, when they seem out of character or their behavior is just odd and erratic, that is the key sign. Like when they seem to just kind of like shut down and withdraw, that's what I've noticed, like with little ones. It's kind of like, okay, wait a second, what's going on? Like they're not how they usually are, because they're very real and very raw. Little ones, they are. They'll say it, and they'll tell it just like it is. But when they're out of character, you pick up on it, and you're just like, okay, what's going on here? Something's not right. And so I think it's important. Like this other book I got, it's Brave to Be Kind. It's a kindness story and activity book for kids. And it has like resources as well for parents and teachers, like intentionally raising kind kids, Just Be Kind Club, Doing Good Together. And it's so like informative, just things that you can ask about your child. Like, what did you do to help someone this week? How do you feel when you help another person? Hug your brother, sister, parents. Write a thank you letter to someone that you love.
So it's really about teaching kids some of those life lessons, important life lessons, and just keep embedding that within them. That's great, Laura. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
And
I love those resources.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Laura. Like that's why it's so important to know your kids, whether it's your students in the classroom or at home, because if you don't know who they truly are, you are not going to recognize those signs when they do appear. Like those kids who come in and they're full of energy when they come in one day and they're just laying there and you're like, what's wrong? This is not like you. Or those kids that come in and they're sitting down, do their work, but then today they're having a hard time. So like, recognizing those signs as to their behaviors, but as well as the way that they speak, because they may say something that's out of character of them and you're like, this isn't like you. What's going on?
Right. And
as she was saying, like asking questions, and so important that when like your child gets home, talk to them. Like, how was your day? Like, what some of my parents told me, they asked their kids, what was your favorite part of the day? What was your least favorite part of the day? Tell me why. Like, I feel like expressing their feelings, explanation of why they feel a certain way, why they have those opinions, really helps them in communication. Explain to me why you're sad. Explain to me why you're happy, and that really teaches them, and they take those skills and apply it everywhere that they are.
Yeah, and you said the key word, communication. Communication is really vital it's the glue that holds it all together. And I think it's really important that parents learn how to communicate more effectively with their children, and that they're doing that on a daily basis. I also feel like it's important to sort of encourage healthy habits. So maybe that can help, promote academically and promote that overall well-being as well. Like, maybe get your kids involved in activities and promote exercise, do regular walks. I know one of the mental health talks we had, Jenny, your friend Kelly, had a great idea about gratitude walks, which was an amazing thing. I love that idea. I know my kids and I, we do like affirmations in the mornings. We go through a book and talk about our affirmations, and like you said, talk about our day, just talk to each other and promote healthy habits. Making sure they have a really healthy breakfast in the morning is really key as well. Making sure they're drinking lots of water, staying hydrated. I know it sounds like, oh, how does that help? But all of those things promote good brain health, and it helps them to grow and nourish, and it really helps them to put it all together. So I think, really encouraging healthy habits is important overall as well.
Absolutely. And in the long run, it goes a long way, because they remember that.
Right.
And then they do it for themselves and then their future children as well. Because they remember, oh, mom did this with me, dad did this with me, And so you're instilling these habits and these memories, these core memories, right? And that's what's so fundamental, for these children. It's foundational, it's nurturing. It just goes so much longer than we even realize it to be, but it's enduring. It is.
Right. And I think it's
oh, sorry. When you mentioned about making sure you have a full tummy in the morning, that is so important. I will tell you, as a teacher, if the kids come in and they are hungry and breakfast has passed, they will not have a good day. You will see it from the day.
We don't have a good day. I was just gonna say that's all. Jenny especially, if she doesn't get her sleep, she's no good.
Right. Again, it comes back to knowing your kids. If you know that your child comes in not acting themselves. I have had a child personally who came in, and then I started noticing a pattern. He didn't have breakfast, so he wasn't happy, and he would come in a mood. And then, you have to accommodate. Like, even though you don't want eating in the classroom, you don't want other kids to see it, because breakfast passed. Sometimes you have to budge, maybe send them to another classroom. Send them with another adult, let them get something in their stomach, because that's a start of the day. And if it starts off bad, it is only going to go downhill from there. You have to pick your battles and build it all the way up. So as the day goes on, it will slowly go down rather than starting from the bottom.
Right. And we mentioned sleep, and that's also a really important one. They have to have a good bedtime routine. Kids have to my kids go to bed at 8:00. That's it. Lights out, go to bed. Everyone's like, how do you make that happen? I'm like, it's a routine that every night at 8:00, I tell them it's bedtime, and we take off the lights, and it's quiet, and there's no distraction. So that's another thing that I think is really important, is making sure they have a consistent bedtime routine as well. Because you don't want
routine is so important, and we tell our parents that too. Like, I've had kids come in the classroom and they're falling asleep, and I'm just wondering, you have to get sleep, but routine is so important. And I feel like that's what held everything together through this pandemic, because they needed to create a routine as if it was a learning environment, regardless of what was going on. You get up, and I always told my parents, have them do the same thing they would do if they were going to school. Brush your teeth, get dressed, get in your clothes, sit down in front of the computer, eat breakfast, follow the same routine as if you would be in the building, because if not, they would not get in the habit, and they wouldn't feel like it's school.
Right, exactly. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So no, this has been a great conversation. I mean, I think we all have to be more aware about children and how they can feel, and how everything can really impact them, and can impact them academically as well. So maybe instead of just jumping to the gun and saying, oh, well, they're not doing well in school, and maybe try to figure out what's really happening emotionally or mentally, and try to break it apart and try to see how you can help that child a little bit more, I think are some important steps we can take. Any lasting thoughts for parents, caregivers, teachers? I mean, everybody, this is how they say it takes a village, and it really does. So we all have to be united to help kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure that they're eating, their brains are still developing, especially their frontal lobe, which we know really doesn't fully develop until we're in our 20s. So just think about that, right? So that really put things in perspective, and you really have to kind of think, okay, well, how can I explain it to them so that they understand it from their level, you know, but you'll be surprised how much they could really understand as well, you know. But I think it's a matter of really trying to understand like how they see the world, and just being empathic, you know, putting yourself in their shoes, trying to understand like why they may be frustrated, and why just simple things, just taking the time to just kind of get eye level with them sometimes. That's all it is. Sometimes they may just need a hug more than anything at that moment. That's just maybe all they may need. Just like a calming voice, something soothing, just something, just they're constantly being told what to do, right? All the time. So I think it's a matter of just kind of like taking some time, maybe if you need some time, a time out for yourself as a parent, as an adult, you go ahead and you do that as well, you know. But just I guess it's hard, but like try to remember how it was when you were a child.
Yeah, put yourself in their shoes. Yeah, no,
Yes, I
absolutely.
always try to do that. I was like,
Yeah.
how was I? And I was pretty frustrated because I felt like no one ever got me.
Right. Like you got to think about it from that point of view. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And
And
then
that's why I so want my son to feel seen and
right.
heard and understood. It's imperative to me.
Yeah, no, and you said something important too about taking some time out. I think that's really important too. Kids can, if we're always talking about meditation and breathing for adults, but this is something kids can do also. I mean, you can teach your kids to do this. Let them take a minute to just breathe it out. You know, sit down for a few minutes and just be calm, be still. And I think that's so important, and that's going to really help to calm the entire body and the brain and everything. And I think if that trickles down to our kids, it'll be a great thing.
It's so true. We practice deep breathing with our son. And when he sees someone else that's upset, he's like, deep breaths, deep breaths.
Yeah, see, it trickles down. Exactly. No, that's
That's awesome.
amazing. But
Well, I feel like I have a lot of work to do as someone that is not yet a parent, but is
Oh, you're so prepared.
yeah.
to be hopefully in the great tips. I think it's super important, like you said, about communication, because growing up for myself, you know, my parents are great parents, right? But like they didn't ask like, how do we feel? You know, how, you know, what kind of act did we do today? They didn't ask us questions like that. So the fact that they're more aware nowadays because it's a different time. There are resources, you know, we have webinars like this, you know, we're all awesome friends like you guys leading the way in teaching all of this to your kids, and something that like I can learn. I'm so appreciative. So thank you so much for the info.
No, definitely. And thank you so much, Homawattie, for joining us. Any lasting thoughts, and how can people find you? And
thank you for having me. And one last thing I think is so important is for parents and teachers to know that they are each other's support system.
Yes.
So parents must communicate with teachers. Like, I'm very understanding. If there's a reason work wasn't done, if there's a reason like something's happened, just talk to your teacher and let them know, because they're more understanding than you think. And also work with us, because we do work in the classroom, but we also need practice at home.
Right.
And same for teachers. They need to be more communicative with parents. If you notice something's not right, you notice that the child's been off, you have to be able to speak to the parent, because they may not see what you're seeing at school, right? So they may see behaviors at home that you're not seeing at school. You may see behaviors at home that they're not seeing, but neither party knows, and there's nothing we can do because we're not communicating.
Right.
And I feel like that's something so important that I've learned throughout the past couple of years with working with kids and families. There's so much miscommunication that can happen due to not speaking.
Right.
And
absolutely.
not having that verbal communication.
Right.
And there is a way to reach me, as you were asking, Jen, Building Little Einsteins, on Instagram as well as on Facebook. You can go ahead and follow me for more helpful tips, or if you want to reach out, have any questions, please feel free to do so.
Thank you so much. And again, for everybody listening, just make sure that you are engaging with your kids, communication, make sure they're getting their rest, they're exercising, they're eating healthy, vitamins, supplements, you know, kids should be taking vitamins from a young age as well. And just make sure that you keep that doors of communication open regularly, and that you are making sure you're talking to the teachers as well. So thank you guys all for joining us today. And this has been a wonderful conversation. And we always have to make sure we're caring for our children's mental health and well-being. That's first and foremost. So thank you all so much.